If you've been out in public the last few days or weeks to make some of your essential trips, you've probably seen a lot of these masks. They're everywhere, right? And probably even more so as there's some requirements to wear them. And don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for the masks and how they protect other people, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels kind of strange and uncomfortable interacting with people when we both have masks on. I go to the grocery store and I look around and it almost feels like I can't connect with people on a human level. Everything feels a little more tense and serious and heavy, and I really think that's much in part because we can't fully see people or see their emotions, read their emotions. We don't know if someone is smiling or angry or somewhere in between. Talking to each other becomes a lot more challenging because you can't see the other person's mouth moving. It's just generally weird all around and feels like something is kind of missing. But imagine the feeling of relief and encouragement and connection that will come when we're all able to finally take off our masks and see each other plainly. Won't that be a really good feeling? We'll see people's smiles, we'll have conversations without any barriers, we'll be able to understand what people are feeling as we just look at them. And I can't help but think that in Jesus, this is what happens for the whole world. The person and life of Jesus is God taking his mask off so that everyone might see him clearly and fully. When we read about God's interactions with humans before Jesus, it's clear that we kind of had a obscured, kind of indirect look at who God was. We read about in the book of Exodus, Moses asking for God's guidance as he's leading the people of Israel. And at one point, Moses basically says, God, you gotta show me yourself. As I'm leading these people, you need to show me your glory so I might know the way forward. And God responds to Moses and says, okay, I'll show you myself, but not all of me, because that would kill you if you saw all of me. Instead, God says, I'll just pass by you and you'll just see my backside, because my face must not be seen. That kind of reminds you of a mask, right? God's face not being able to be seen. Or even in a little bit earlier in the story of Israel, God's presence evidences itself with the Israelites as a pillar of cloud in the day and a pillar of fire by night, but not in any sort of like clearly distinguishable character. Was God with the Israelites? Absolutely. Was he leading them? For sure. Was he communicating with them? 100%. But it was all sort of blurry. It was kind of like the Israelites were living in the dark and they couldn't fully make out who God was or what he was like. And then Jesus comes to us and he launches his public ministry. And in his very first sermon, if you will, he says this. He quotes the prophet Isaiah and says, "The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." It's almost as if Jesus is acknowledging, yes, it's been dark. You've had questions about what God is like. You haven't been able to fully see, but look no further. I have turned the light on. I flipped the switch so the light is on that everyone might see me clearly and fully. Again, in the book of John, Jesus says, "The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. I have come into the world as a light so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness." In Jesus, God's mask is taken off. We get to see him face to face. We get to know him in all his fullness, and we see that God in Jesus is a God of love and joy and peace and forgiveness. And so in this kind of crazy season of mask wearing, I hope that we can be encouraged in knowing that God doesn't have a mask on. God has revealed himself to us perfectly, clearly, and totally, fully, and his name is Jesus. I want to end with a passage from the book of Hebrews, chapter 1. It says, "In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son, Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being." Be blessed knowing that we fully know God in Jesus, and we can come to him face to face without any masks on. See you guys.